Hello, everyone. We welcome you all in another Brainaura's episode on systematic approaches in scientific writing. Scientific writing is an important step when preparing for your journal. Therefore, delving deeper into this topic will prepare you for your impactful PhD. But before we begin with our session, let me give you a brief introduction about Brainaura. We are a small team of experts from various academic and industrial backgrounds. Our services are cohesively designed for young PhD grads, academicians, researchers, and entrepreneurs. We provide services ranging from thesis writing support, research support, data analysis, skills development, and much more. Visit our website www.brainaura.com to know more about us. So, in our today's session, our speaker is Dr. Uttara Basu. And Dr. Basu, you are most welcome to the session today.
Thank you very much.
And we hope we will have a great conversation here. And our audience will get amazing insights from you and your experience.
Yeah, I would really like to thank the Brainaura team for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on scientific writing. And I hope to address some of the challenges that we face during scientific writing at some point in our career. And also, I should say that these thoughts are not absolute and exclusive, but mostly these are born out of my learning experiences throughout my career so far.
Awesome. So I would like to give a brief introduction about Dr. Basu. So she received her bachelor's degree in chemistry from Presidency College, Calcutta, and then she joined the Indian Institute of Science as an integrated PhD student, where she worked in the field of bioinorganic chemistry, focusing on developing metal complexes for photochemotherapeutic applications. Later, she moved to US at the University of Miami for her postdoctoral research on developing biodegradable nanoparticles for prostate cancer targeted therapeutic nanoparticles and neuroprotectant nanoparticles for brain diseases. Then she worked for an year in Paris in medicinal inorganic chemistry, where she was developing on novel photosynthesizers. Currently, she is a research associate in the Technical University of Braunschweig in Germany. During her PhD and postdoctoral research, she has authored more than 25 peer-reviewed research and review articles in various international journals. So, as promised, we will start today's session. So, Dr. Basu, I would like to know what exactly is scientific writing?
So scientific writing is a form of writing which is meant to communicate the scientific information and findings with other scientists. As a researcher, you are expected to share your result works in various forms. Most obviously is a journal article, but it could also be a scientific poster or like a research proposal. And well, some aspects of the writing style vary in these different genres. The basic tenets of scientific writing are generally consistent.
Okay. So, since this is the gist, so how it is different from other forms of writing, for example, technical writing?
While technical writing is the process of gathering information from the experts and presenting it to the audience in a clear and very easily understandable form. Now, it is detailed enough for the audience to understand the topic of interest with or without having prior expertise. For example, it could be like writing an instruction for a manual or like operating an instrument or specifications of a project.
Yeah.
To highlight the differences between scientific writing and technical writing, I have a few points like scientific writing, it breeds better understanding of a topic, whereas technical writing is generally the truth. Scientific writing might support a hypothesis, but technical writing is all about hypothesis which has been already established and one has to follow precisely. There is no room for speculation in technical writing.
Okay.
These are some of the basic differences.
Okay. So when a student is, working on this scientific writing, so what is the approach they should take on?
Needless to say that scientific writing is not a very easy task, especially for a beginner. What I find very useful is to structure the paper in a top-down fashion. Okay. By this, I mean it's important to first work on the macro structure, that is to select the contents of the paper and organize it in your own way, which is reader friendly.
Okay.
Then it is important to work on the mid-level structure. That is, you try to deliver one message with each paragraph. Finally, you work on the microstructure, like polish your paper all the way down to every details, every figure, legends, tables, and also the language.
Okay.
It's important that the author should engage the reader and not just try to impress them.
Okay. So that's very interesting because the thing is when people get so much into the technical aspect, like they tend to forget the reader has to be engaged into it. So what do you
Exactly.
suggest, like how one should avoid the errors or something when they are working onto the scientific writing?
This is a very important question while dealing with scientific writing. And I always think about this on my own, and also I would like to share this that never forget the reader. They are the
Yeah,
most important part of the equation because the purpose of the paper is not just to document the findings, but also to communicate these findings to the entire scientific community.
true.
So, this is one of the very important things that one has to keep in mind. Secondly, speculation. Scientific writing doesn't allow much room for speculation. And even if there is speculation, it has to be backed by evidence or literature reports.
Okay.
And some other errors are like using very long sentences that continue to ramble and confuse the readers and make the actual point get obfuscated.
Okay.
There is one more thing I would like to say that sometimes we use passive voice while using scientific writing, but nowadays, excessive use of passive voice has made writing like not so clear. We don't know the exact information is not passed on to the readers with excessive passive voice.
Okay.
And the last thing I would like to say is omitting very crucial information
Mhm.
even if this has not generated the expected outcomes from our experiment. Because unless the readers know about the hurdles or the potential pitfalls, there is a possibility that it will be repeated in the future. And unless all the details are mentioned, it is difficult or nearly impossible to reproduce the study. And then this research will face a dead end. So it is very important to inform the readers of all the methodologies to the finest details.
Okay, that's actually a lot of interesting points that have been covered in this because like these are the common mistakes students end up making. So what
Yes.
from your experience, what are the additional challenges like they come onto it, like when in the scientific writing process?
I would say that the first major challenge in scientific writing is structuring the paper. You
Okay.
have collected all the data, but then how to organize this data, how to structure the paper. Once this is done, the next step is to convey this message in a crisp, clear language, also which is scientifically accurate and an engaging read.
Okay.
Sometimes we tend to use very dry and technical language, which might convey the information, but it's not very engaging for the reader. So people will not enjoy reading the paper. And of course, the paper has to be written grammatically correct. And this
Yes,
is especially challenging for the non native English speakers.
true that. So, because for every paper and every research, getting it published is one of the most important aspect.
Of
So,
course, yes.
what do you suggest? Like, when an editor or a publisher, what are their expectations when they're reviewing the paper? What students should keep in mind?
So, before I answer this question, we should remember that scientific papers especially have two kinds of audience.
Okay.
First is the referee, who will help the journal editor to decide whether the paper is suitable for publication. And second are the readers themselves, who are more or less knowledgeable about the topic that is addressed in the paper. Now, to be accepted by the referees and also cited by the readers, these papers must be just more than a chronological account of the research work. That they must convince the reviewer or the editor that the research presented is important, it's valid, and it's relevant to other scientists in the field. So they have to emphasize both on the motivation of the work and also the outcome. And it's not just a technical account of the experimental methods or the data that they have collected.
Okay. So that's a very interesting point because one of the most common challenges that students face, and a lot of the young students have asked us also, is like because when doing the research, the amount of data that is collected is huge. So,
Correct.
so the problem that students come up is like how to, decide what data is to be put down on the paper and which shouldn't be considered. So, how do you suggest how the collected data should be implemented when writing the paper?
Yeah, so again, another very important and crucial
Yeah.
part of scientific writing.
Yes.
So, data collection is a process of gathering all the observations or measurements the student does during the experiments, right? And these research papers, they are often based on like copious amounts of data, which has to be summarized in a brief format within a certain page limit or word count. So first thing to be kept in mind is that the data presented to the reader should be understandable and also visually appealing way. It has to be presented in the paper. And it should not be like just a repetition of the same thing. Then the reader loses interest. So all the data that support the major findings of the experiment or the theme of interest to the paper should be placed in the main body of the paper. All supporting data, which are also extremely important, mind you, but this should be a part of the appendix or the supporting information file.
Okay.
And there are numerous ways of presenting the data, like in the form of tables, figures, images. Yeah. So uh, this is for the authors to decide, like which should go in a table format, which will give a figure, and which should be how the figures should be plotted. So this varies across authors, and but this should all be made in a very easy and understandable way.
So that's very interesting point, as you had mentioned for tables and figures. So and those are very crucial when data is collected. They segregate the data into the tables or the charts and figures. So we would like to know, like, is it necessary to have the text next to it, or just putting up tables and figures is good enough to in the paper?
So ideally, the data should be, which is given in the table or has been represented in the form of a figure, should be understandable on its own, just with a caption and a legend. Yeah. But sometimes it is more complicated than that, because for a beginner or a young researcher, if the data is not explained in a text following it, may not be well understood. And also, sometimes when a scientist is doing a new experiment, which is not being routinely done in the field, for instance,
Okay.
even experts might need an explanation in the form of a text. So, ideally, for routine experiments, tables and figures should be understood on their own, but this is not always the case in reality.
Okay, true. So another very important that question comes up to us is, how did the content of the result and discussion sections differ?
This is also a question which I have every time I write a paper, even now after writing many papers. But so the result and discussion section is actually where you report your findings and you analyze the data, right?
Yeah.
It's often very difficult to segregate this into two sections, and also it may confuse the readers because they cannot make sense of the results without any explanation. But when we have to do this, in the results section, we should just focus on the findings. We chronologically place the data. This can be difficult to understand because it is technical, but this is where the discussion section comes following the results section, where the authors must indicate the significance of the results. This section should provide all the explanations and discuss maybe the literature reviews, the references from which the authors have derived motivation from the work, for instance, also maybe the limitations of the study, uh, speculation, hypothesis. So this is more like a conversation part where the arguments are being placed by the authors, and this will carry forward the this will carry forward the message of the paper.
Okay. So there's another interesting question. Like, what do you think? How important are the citations in scientific writing?
This is one of the most important sections in the paper, although I think that sometimes we underestimate the importance. Why? I will tell you. I have several thoughts on this. Firstly, citation serves as a fact-checking tool, that
Okay.
the very act of looking up a reference will verify the accuracy of the data that is presented in the paper. Citation will make one a better researcher and also a better writer. When you
Okay.
cite specific sources, then it removes some of the hallmarks of what we say, intellectual laziness, like vague thinking or
Yeah.
sloppy writing
Yes.
or just random claims. Yeah, like
Yeah.
everyone knows, or it is believed. When you cite a paper, the readers will actually know who believes or who thinks. This is very precise, which is very important in scientific writing.
True.
And also, careful citation will help to build the credibility of the scientist or the scholar. It is a characteristic of a very well read scientist.
Okay. So yeah, that's a very interesting insight. So, like we have discussed so many factors about scientific writing. So, what do you think, like the students can do to improve their skills in scientific writing?
Well, like just like developing any other skill set, to improve the writing skills, one first needs to identify the major hurdle that he or she is facing.
Okay.
Sometimes we face various types of writing resistance, like, okay, this draft is not good enough. Okay, I don't have a great idea. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe I'll start working on it tomorrow. No, make writing a habit. Like,
Yes.
dedicate a fixed time to write. Like, it may not be the best piece of article that you have written, it may be just your thoughts, but it is important to write them down.
Yes.
And one very important thing I find is to read the works of other scientists. In the beginning, uh, it might be, you may not understand everything, but continue reading. Don't stop. Read it the next day or the next day again. Highlight the portions that you find interesting. You may seek feedback from others, from your colleagues, from your mentor. So it's just about practice, practice, practice. And this is the only way that you can improve your writing skill.
That's really well said. I think practicing is a very crucial aspect to, gain excellence in any field across. And I think
Exactly.
when it comes to research, it becomes more crucial to
Yes,
get their work really, effective, and so that people are able to understand and work better. So,
exactly.
so in we have a last question, like what will be the final advice that you would like to share with your students, like from your experience, probably, something what you find, because it's a very challenging field, people might lose motivation or something like that. So what is your advice for the young students?
Yeah, so I must emphasize that scientific writing is hard, and it's even harder for the non-native English speakers. Yeah. Nowadays, there are many online sources available to guide the student step by step through, like for the steps of scientific writing, how to get your manuscript ready. But despite everything, it is only with practice that one can improve the skills. Reading the works of others, followed by evaluating, comparing the writing style in different papers, and then one day you will develop your own style of writing. But this will not happen on day one. Just
Yeah,
make writing a habit,
true.
and this will help to organize your thoughts and eventually also improve your writing skill.
True.
And then
And
you will feel
yeah.
that writing is not as difficult as you think.
Yes. That's well said, actually. So, yeah, Dr. Basu, this is it for us for now. And it has been a great experience and fun to talk to you and interact with you today. And I hope you also enjoyed here today.
Yes, I loved to talk about scientific writing, yeah, and share my thoughts on this. Yes, it has been super fun.
Yes, I mean, I can sense the passion in your voice, like how your thought process works. So it's like you're really passionate in what you do, which actually counts at the end of the day.
Yes, I really enjoy writing. And so I just shared my thoughts on it from my experience.
Thank you so much once again for coming to Brainaura's podcast platform. And
Thank you so much, too.
And to our audience, thank you once again for listening to us. And stay tuned for our next episode, which we will be releasing very soon. Thank you, guys, and have a great day.